I come from a long line of musicians. My parents and my grandparents were all professional musicians, and it just seemed almost too inevitable that I would be a musician. So I actually went away from it when I was a teenager and tried other things. I was very interested in theater, in acting. I was very interested in art, painting and sculpture. But I came back to music. Music really was my first love, and I couldn't live without it. So it became my life, my path. As a composer, in addition to the notes and the sounds, there are other elements that come in as to why I write what I write and for whom I write. Very often it starts with the person that I am writing the piece for to begin with. For example, in this newest piece, Rashomon, I'm writing for a specific individual, James Schlafer, and a very unusual instrument, the shakuhachi. I like the idea of writing for an individual person that I know because that person's personality becomes part and parcel of the musical elements. By the same token, The Frog Prince, which I've written for young audiences, also takes into consideration the audience itself. Because I remember as a child hearing music, especially unfamiliar music, and what I was listening for. I think children appreciate a good story. I think that's a very important element of a piece for young audiences. And things that are not too long, things that are colorful, music that has a sense of rhythm to it and a melodic line. So I think the audience is an extremely important component of what we do. And as a performer myself, because I perform as a conductor, we know that we feel the energy of an audience. You can tell when an audience is with you or when they're kind of thinking about where they're going to go for dinner afterwards. You get that sense, that intensity of listening, which you certainly hope for. You don't always get it, but you always hope for it. And so the audience becomes an important component. And really, it's kind of a collaboration as a composer between yourself, the performer, and yourself and the audience, and the performer and the audience. And in addition to just writing for the personality of a performer, I like to write a piece where the performer can feel as though he or she can express his or her personality within the piece that I've written. Particularly important when I'm writing an opera, because I like to think that the person acting as well as singing the role will be able to express something that is very important to their own life, not only to the life of the character they're portraying. I've never actually been to Japan except on my way to China. I've been to China many times. I've conducted the Shanghai Symphony, Beijing Central Opera, many other orchestras in China. And I'm familiar with Chinese instruments, but I was not familiar with the shakuhachi. And I found in listening to the instrument that there's a whole world of timbre, of color, that the instrument brings into play. And pairing that with traditional Western string instruments was very meaningful. It has its own very particular voice and very particular technical things that it does that the Western flute and even the Chinese dizi, which is sort of the equivalent, it's also a wooden flute, does not do. So I am excited about the performance and about working with James Schlafer, who is going to be doing the shakuhachi solo. I worked back and forth with him, sending him drafts of the score and getting his input, because of course when you write for an instrument that you don't play, it's always helpful to work with the soloist. I think composers now is a spectacular idea. So many of us are working on our own, in our own spheres, and we have our own fan base, and I think that bringing together composers in the way that composers now is operating is just such a great idea because we can help each other. It's a collaborative process. We can cross-fertilize, as it were, and knowing what each other is doing in this month of February is extremely important. Networking not only for each other, but for each other's audiences as well. So I think this is a great idea, and it really goes in the direction of bringing us together rather than separating us. So many times people think, well, there's a piece of pie, and if somebody else gets that piece, then I can't get it. And I think Composers Now is saying that there is a piece of pie for all of us, and if we share this pie, it's going to be better for all of us as a whole, as well as for each one of us individually.